Hello, and welcome everybody to the Pixelogic ZBrush live stream. If you don't know who I am Ben, or you can call me Follygon, doesn't really matter to me. But yeah, we've been working on this cool concept by Dan Kelby over here for the past, I want to say 3 streams, I think, 3 or 4 maybe. I've lost count at this point. But yeah, each session is about 2 hours long or so, so we're around the 6 to 8 hour mark right now. And yeah, we're just going to continue sculpting on this bad boy. I was working on the stripes for just a few minutes before I hit that go live button. But yeah, I'll talk about the process up here. I talked briefly about it at the end of the last live stream. I need to open up my chat real quick, sorry about that. But yeah, I'll talk more about the stripes. I'll continue working on those, and yeah, it's going to be a pretty chill session. Feel free to just hang out, lurk in the background, ask any questions, and I will make sure that we are going out live, which it looks like we are. So cool, we can go ahead and get started here. So again, my name is Ben. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat as we go. And go to my pen. Let's do this. So like I said, I talked briefly about these stripes during the last live stream. And what is unique about what I'm doing here for the stripes is that I'm actually making them out of geometry, which might seem a little weird, but I actually like doing this on any kind of texture or kind of shape that is very hyper specific and needs to be really clean. So I find that for stripes in particular as one of those things to be something that I like to do with geometry. And what's great about ZBrush, especially with the new, what's it called, intersection masker plugin, we can actually convert that to polypaint later. So we can take our geometry and make that into polypaint later if we want. But what's great about working with geometry is that we have all sorts of different brushes and features and tools that we can work with to make our form a lot more clean here than what I can personally do with just using some paint brushes here in ZBrush. I'm a sculptor. I am not much of a painter. So in terms of creating just like super clean forms for that kind of stuff, I like to use geometry. And I'll show you a couple different things. I have an idea for something that we can do maybe with a live boolean to make these stripes stick to the surface very cleanly. What is going on, Pars? How are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and get this fourth or last, I should say, little stripey in here. I'll try to do that real quick. Whoa, it's gonna be a tight one. And we'll just kind of get that into a basic position there. I had a lot of people asking about this process during the last live stream, like, why are you doing it this way? This seems so, oh, wrong button. 1 second there, delete that. People saying that, oh, it seems really backwards. And it kind of is until you try it yourself. See what all the hubbub is about. Oh, we mirrored that the wrong way. There we go. All right, cool. So I will take this geometry in just a moment and show you some cool tricks. I'm just trying to get the actual shape a little bit more accurate. I'm not trying to be incredibly accurate on this dude. It is my job to be as accurate as possible, so normally I am a very big stickler for that kind of thing. But I think for tonight and for this character, I'm kind of just having fun with him. Whoop, didn't want to crease that. And he doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. We don't need to spend twice as much time making him an exact copy of what we see over here. But again, Dan Kelby, if you guys want to check out the original concept artist, welcome everybody. I see some more people joining us now. How's everybody doing tonight? Wherever you are in the world. Last stream we had some people, it was morning for them. It is 6 p.m. for me over here on the East Coast. What about you guys? Let me know. Let me know where you guys are watching from. I think it's always fun. Areg, what's up? Flaming Hawk, how you doing? Are you going to fix the space between the stripes and the character? No, we're just gonna let him float off his body. Yeah, we'll fix him, don't worry. That'll be all part of the process. And what's great about the way I'm doing this, or the way I'm going to do it in a moment, is that they actually don't need to be lined up perfectly with the body. And you'll see why here very soon. Let's make this one a little bit wider over here. 7 p.m. over in Brazil. Welcome, soulless lady. How are you doing? Yamikiro, also in Brazil. Hello, hello. Kushwa says nice stripes. Well, thank you. Thank you, Kushwa. Juan Carlos, what's up? Welcome, welcome. Working on our tiger boy. Our thick tiger boy. I've just been calling him Thick Boy. He needs a name, so if anybody can come up with an awesome name for this tiger, I would be super appreciative. I think the last time I actually asked the stream chat to do something like this, I was working on a witch character, and I'm trying to remember what it was. I think they ended up naming the character Gravy. Gravy Nova, that's what it was. Gravy Nova. So it was a witch character, derpiest first name, and then a super like magical and fantastical last name. So Gravy Nova. So if you guys can top Gravy Nova on this thick boy here, I would be super appreciative. 23 o'clock, so is that would be 11 p.m., right? Subtract 2, it's the second, yeah, you know. 10 p.m. in the UK, Grand Theft EX, welcome. He looks like the Kellogg's mascot. Is Kellogg's Tony the Tiger? That might be who you're thinking of. Tony the Tiger got swole as heck if this is Tony, but it's not supposed to be Tony. Arnold, like the Schwarzer Tiger, something like that. Francisco, welcome, all the way over in Italy. How's it going, man? Which is your opinion on using base meshes? Kind of feel guilty using them. I would say for personal use, if you're doing stuff to learn, or for personal work, I typically always recommend create everything from scratch or use your own base meshes that you have created, because you're going to learn a lot more that way. If you're doing something for production and you're getting paid for it, use base meshes all the way. You want to get the work done as quickly as possible. There's no shame in making things easier on yourself. I mean, if that were the case, and if I felt guilty about that kind of stuff, I wouldn't be sculpting digitally. Like, oh, all these tools, they're cheating, right? So try to make it as easy as possible on yourself for that kind of thing. But definitely for personal self-study, all that stuff, I always recommend, do it yourself. Don't use like other people's work as a starting point. You're gonna learn a lot more if you do it all yourself, especially if you're kind of newer to modeling or sculpting at all. I find it a very good practice to get into. I pretty much create everything from scratch on every single character that I do, just because there's such a large variety in forms between all the different stylized characters that I work on. Like I did a little chick, a little like duck character for, trying to remember the name of it, Duncan the Duck, Duncan's Skyboat something Duncan, I can't remember. If you look up Duncan the Happy Little Duck, you will find him. He's a cutie. But yeah, there's just a lot of different variation in stylized characters. But if there's like a human character, I have more than a few base meshes that I've created that I like to start from. And personally, because I've made them, I know the geometry really well, and it just makes them a lot easier for me to use. So you might be wondering, what the heck am I doing right now? I am taking the geometry of my stripe, and I'm using the move brush with backface masking on, If you don't know what that is, it's in your brush menu under auto masking. And essentially it lets me move geometry on one side of the mesh without moving it on the other side. So I can move geometry only on one side of the mesh at a time. Very helpful for kind of drafting surfaces, which is what this is called right now. And we're going to use that in combination with a couple things. So right now I'm in a situation where I want to convert this geometry to polypaint. So we can use the new intersection masking plugin that was introduced with ZBrush 2019. A very cool little plugin. It takes geometry, I mean, it does exactly what it sounds like. It takes geometry that's intersecting, and then it creates a mask from those two intersecting pieces, which is how we can convert this to polypaint. Use that mask to create polypaint. Or I could even use live boolean to create a planar surface that is directly in line with the surface of my geometry, which is a nice little trick as well. That's how I used to do it, but with the intersection masker plugin, which I'll show you guys here in just a second, it's pretty neat. So let's do a little test here with one of our stripes. Tiberius Tigerson. Tiberius is very good. I like that a lot. Good job, Michael. Michael Moro, welcome. Francisco, yes, 11 p.m. Sorry. No, it's okay. I can do the conversion. I just have to think about it for like 2 seconds because I'm not used to using 24-hour clocks. We are stupid Americans that can only count to 12, right? Tiger hood, he does. He's got that nice hood going. We actually need to do quite a bit more work on that hood, but he's getting there. Tyrone? How would you say? It's Tyrone, but with like a G thrown in the middle. So Tigrone? Tigerone? I don't know. There's something there. It's close. Flaming Hawk, how long have I used ZBrush? A little over 5 years, I believe. All right, let's look at, let me do a quick little crease here. Crease edge, not an edge loop, just the edge. Let me just fix this point. Come on. Okay. Let me do it on the other side. So like I said, you don't need to get this to line up super duper well. Not with this method at least. But let me show you guys the intersection masker plugin and how we can use it to our benefit now. So I have these two pieces of geometry, the head of our tiger and this stripe of geometry that I've created. And the reason why I like to do it this way is because you can get a lot of super clean forms out of manipulating your geometry. If you're experienced with working with the Z modeler brush in particular in ZBrush, you can get a lot of really clean shapes pretty quickly and easily. So that's what I've done here. I'm just making sure that this is kind of intersecting a little bit better before I do this. But yeah, all right, looks good. Let's add in some subdivision levels and also delete them temporarily, of course. This guy doesn't have any subdivs, so that doesn't even matter. And then what we will do, ooh, I duplicated that incorrectly. 1 second. Let me undo those subdivs. So duplicate, save him down here, just to keep a backup of our stripe, and then add our subdivs. Cool. All right. So now what I'm going to do is merge these two pieces of geometry together, just using the merge and merge down menu. Okay, that's fine. And beautiful. Now we got those. Then we just come up into our Z plugin menu and click on intersection masker. Easy as that. So it'll go through the geometry here of these two separate objects, figure out where they're intersecting, and it's gonna calculate. I have almost 3 million polys in this object, so it might take a second there, but it looks like it is done. So now, what do we got? Let's move. Ooh, you know what? I cannot use masking there, so let me just get rid of you. Bam. So now we have a mask where those two were intersecting. And you can see it's not super clean, and this is because the mask is based on the resolution of my geometry. So unfortunately, we got some other ones down here. I can move these. So what we can do is we can control click to soften our mask if we would like, or we can control alt click, or we can sit here and clean this up manually. Really, it's up to you. Or there's another little trick that I'll show you guys here in just a second. Let's split this off. And this time what I'm going to do is use, so I have this stripe. I came up with this technique while sculpting some patterns in some bottle products for a client, I think last year. And it involves using live boolean. So I'll duplicate the head, set it to subtractive, and turn on live boolean. And now we can see where this is kind of intersecting there. So this is the way, before using intersection masker, that I would do something like this. So essentially what I'm going to do is just click on boolean, make boolean mesh. And this seems really strange, but what you will see is that we will get out of this. We go up into this mesh here. This is the actual boolean mesh. Let me clear my canvas real quick. And with it, we have a new polygroup created from where those intersected. And I'll just grab that mesh, and you can see what this looks like. Turn on double, and I'll flip it, and I'll turn off the poly paint. And I will append it to our tiger head. Let me just move this around real quick, get a little organized. And there we go. It is lined up perfectly with that. And if it's, you know, intersecting a little bit there, you can move it a little bit if you need to, or you can maybe just give it a quick little tiny inflate, and you have a perfectly lined up stripe there, exactly how your mesh was intersecting. So that's one way that you could do something like this. And then you can take this mesh. So I like to use this for a lot of different things. Again, this is like a technique that I came up with for carving really super clean forms in bottles that were like dynameshed, and the geometry was not really workable in terms of like sculpting directly on it. So live boolean was a huge help there. But yeah, we can sit around here and play with this a little bit longer. You know, it's still geometry actually, so I can use my move brush and sit here and manipulate the actual stripe a little bit more if I want to play around with that. Yeah, there's a lot of different applications for this. I've just kind of used it as a demonstration for something that's not probably something super applicable if you're trying to make a real-time mesh. I definitely wouldn't recommend this for something like that. But if you want to use it for something like 3D printing or just for a quick render, this is absolutely applicable. All right, let's delete all the extra stuff that I just duplicated for that quick little demonstration. Extra stripe and extra head. Alright, so what do we got going on? We got a bunch of floating stripes, and we can sit here and continue to work with the stripes. I think I would like to create some whiskers really quick so we can show off some more workflows for some cool stuff. So let's do that next. Let's clean up our scene just so we're not getting too busy here. And don't feel like you have to wait till I'm working on something specific for you to ask a question. Like if you have a question about how I sculpted the hands, don't feel like you have to wait until I get down there to work on that either. So I want to show you guys some stuff using some curve brushes. We are going to use curve brushes to create a couple whiskers up here so you guys can get the idea for the workflow. And I'll also show you how we can use them to create the claws that are on his fingers. They're very, very tiny, so we'll have to play around there. But let's go ahead and get started here. First of all, you need something to insert the curve brush onto. And if you have geometry that has subdivision levels, you'll get an error telling you that you need to delete your subdivision levels or freeze them. So we need to do that. But typically what I like to do is just duplicate the mesh that I'm going to insert them on and then just delete my subdivision levels. You can drop down really low first so you can insert your curve on a low res mesh just so you're not unneedingly adding geometry to your scene. In this instance, I'm just going to insert them on the head here. So I duplicated the head and I'm just using the curve tube snap brush. So we can sit here and click and draw this out really quick. We'll turn off our poly paint. And let's go ahead and get one of these whiskies going. What I recommend, at least at first, is using a little bit of a larger brush stroke. Whoops, wrong mesh. Just to make it a little bit easier to control the shape. You can get more steps out of a smaller brush, so there's a lot more room for kind of wiggle there. But if you use a larger draw size, you have more kind of steps there, and it makes it a little bit easier to control the shape. So larger brush stroke, smoother curve, at least at first. So let's see, we got a pretty simple curve off this direction. And you can see that we're getting a little bit of some snapping going on, and that is because I am using the curve tube snap brush. But there is a little trick up here under the picker. Under depth, we can turn on once Z, and essentially what that little toggle does, I'll show you. Essentially what once Z or continuous Z is, when you start sculpting on a surface, ZBrush is continually sampling, or the brush is sampling the surface as you sculpt on it so that it can get the accurate depth. But by clicking that once Z option under the picker, essentially what we're saying is on that first little brush stroke there, when I click and drag that out, just get it on the first stroke, get the depth, and don't add or sample any more depth from there. In layman's terms. That's how I like to think about it. So let's make these a lot more thin. Much, much more thin. We'll figure out the depth there in a second. But to delete your curve, you can see that we still have the curve here and it is manipulatable. We just want to click on our surface as long as we have a curve brush selected and get rid of that guy. And there we go. We got one whisker. Beautiful. One simple tiny whisker. And from here, honestly, this is pretty high poly. It's really dense. We have like almost 4,000 polys here for just a singular whisker. So let's Z-remesh this down super low as we can. And honestly, I would probably go through and delete even more of the edge loops there manually. That's about as low as we can get off of just a quick Z-remesh. And yeah, let's just kind of pull this out. Let's look at it from the top view, because you know we don't want this to just be a super boring straight line. You look at it, I mean this happens with a lot of stuff. You'll be sculpting and working on something from one view, and then you turn to the side and you realize that you completely forgot about it from those other angles. Do you pose before detailing or after? It kind of depends on what the detail is. For instance, if I were to put seams on clothing, I would probably pose, excuse me, pose the character first and then do seams. But if it's something that could be very symmetrical and for instance, like fingernails or claws on a hand, I would be totally fine making the fingernails and claws and then mirroring those over to the other side and then getting into posing. It just kind of depends on what it is. A good rule of, or not a rule of thumb, but just think about, is it going to be easier to do this symmetrically, or is it going to be easier to do it asymmetrically after posing? The reason why doing seams is a lot easier after posing is because you're probably going to have a pose that affects clothing and affects the way that the clothing is folding and shaping and changing. So if you sculpt seams first and then you start sculpting folds over top of those seams, you're probably going to mess up your seams and screw a lot of stuff up there. So I find that it's a lot easier to do the pose, sculpt the folds, and then add seams last, as an example there. Side effects, what is going on? Haven't seen you in a minute. How are you doing? Great series of tuts over on YouTube. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that greatly. For those that have never checked out my stuff before, I believe there is a URL somewhere at the top of the screen to my YouTube channel, or you can just Google Follygon and you'll find all my stuff. My Gumroad, of course, with all my courses and everything else on there. But yeah, check it out. I got a ton of free content over on my YouTube channel, and even more content over on my Gumroad that's a little bit more higher quality, but of course paid content. Making some monsters and practicing all the time. That's how you do it. Alright. Well, we got one whisker, but I think you guys get the idea for the process. So let's look at claws next, because I think there's something interesting that we can do down there that you guys will like. Where do I want these whiskers? We got folders now. Next up, I would love to get the ability to nest folders inside other folders. Need folderception. Alright, let's look at claws. And for this, we're actually going to use the same brush that I used to create the whiskers, which seems a little strange, right? Why would you use a whisker brush for claws? Well, it's not a whisker brush. It's just a brush that I so happen to use for our whiskers. So let's look at how we can make these claws using the same brush, the Curve Tube Snap Brush. So those are pretty tiny, but essentially what we want to do is just draw out our basic curve again. Well, let's make that a little bit longer. So we got that, and then we want to open up our, where is it, stroke menu. Under curve modifiers, there's this little button here, size. Click on that guy, and let me use my actual pen here, a little bit easier. So essentially what we're doing is we're saying modify the size from the beginning to the end of the length of the stroke. I just had a stroke. Going from larger to smaller. So now if I tap on here and update my stroke that I've created, you'll see that it is now tapering the way that we adjusted that curve. So we can adjust that curve however we want. There's a bunch of different things we can do there. But that looks pretty good to me. We're getting the basic shape of our claw. So we got that. And let's just grab our hand and our newly formed claw. And we'll rotate this and move it into place. And scale it down a lot, because that is very, very thin. So let's scale on down. Find a good place for this little claw here. Give it a bit more curve with our move brush. And what I like to do for this kind of thing is make one of them as good as I can and then duplicate it for everything else. So why make it, 4 or 5 times when I can just do it once and then reuse and manipulate and modify it as I go. Alright, so that's still probably a little bit too big, but honestly his hands are a little bit undefined. So let's stick with maybe just a tad smaller. And now I'll show you a little trick for duplicating stuff. You can, with your transpose line or your 3D gizmo, either or, you can just control click and drag and duplicate your objects, which is super handy. I like using the transpose line a lot more though than the 3D gizmo. I've just been using it for a long time and I'm kind of used to it. I'm stuck in my ways. I will never change. I do use the 3D gizmo though from time to time. Alright. Beautiful. Beautiful, simple little claws. Alright, we'll duplicate this just a couple more times. And then look at a couple other things. We're almost, well, I would like to get into posing tonight. We had a question about posing and details and all that. So I'm actually at a point where I'm more than comfortable starting to pose this character. We've headed in that way with the arms already a little bit, which is totally fine. But the legs need to get a little bit more asymmetrical. Because right now, it looks very, very boring with his pose, with the way his feet are planted. So we'll take a look at that. And whatever else we got on the plate. There's a bunch. Is there a way to duplicate the object while rotating and not moving? To my knowledge, I don't believe you can, if I remember correctly. Quick check. No, you cannot. You cannot control click and rotate, but I mean, you can always simply click the duplicate button and then, you know, have your pivot still set up and rotate from that point. So there are two different meshes there. So you can just duplicate it if you want to do that way, which is typically fine because you can only control click and drag to duplicate stuff if it has no subdivision levels. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I've never run into a situation where I was like, wow, really wish I could do that. It's not, never been a deal breaker for me. Alright, give our claws a little color there. And honestly, if I am trying to do something really fast, a lot of the time what I'll just do is I have my mesh. I'm like, oh, I want to rotate this really quick. I'll just control click and drag ever so slightly and then start to rotate it from there. So that's also another thing that you can do. Pick your poison. If you need something super accurate, duplicate. If not, just control click and drag and then rotate a little bit from there. Alright. Got some claws going on. Got our jar, a bottle, very large bottle. The hand over here needs to be posed quite a bit better based on what we got going on. His finger is a little chunky. How are we gonna do this? How are we gonna fit that in there? I hate hands so much. Hands are just the worst. Posing hands is never fun. We'll do a quick little rotate here. And let's try to get this something quick. Just so it's looking a little bit better than it is right now. It feels very out of place. Ooh. His fingers are very kind of round and bulbous. So we'll just do these quick. Because honestly, I'm going to be smoothing these out to round them quite a bit. The hands are cute and chubby. They are cute and chubby. Some nice shapes going on there. My hands define the joints and planes a little bit more, so. One second here. Not logged in. There we go. Rev says, have you ever thought about speaking to a university? Not on my own, like, oh man, I would just love to speak at a university. I mean, not in that regard. But if I was asked or invited, I would consider it, sure. And I have been asked to two universities specifically that are close to me. Northern Kentucky University, which is the college that I went to, and did not study 3D modeling. I actually was just recently asked to come speak there for I'm trying to think of what the event was. I honestly didn't have time, and I kind of put off replying for a little bit, and they kept emailing me, so I was finally like, I can't do it, I'm sorry. It was like some dean something. I don't really know. I didn't know even what I was supposed to. It was like a thing where a bunch of people were coming. It was like some board of, that's what it was. It was like a board of graduate students plus, graduated students, not graduate students, as well as professors within the media informatics field, which is the field that I was in, which is kind of like a new media arts degree, in a way. So like I said, I didn't study 3D modeling when I was in college. I studied a lot of front-end web design and development, as well as a little bit of 3D modeling and game dev stuff in Maya and Unity. Pretty surface level stuff. At the time, I thought I wanted to be an animator, a 3D animator, and boy was I very, very wrong. And that's around the time that I discovered ZBrush and started learning more and more about digital sculpting. I'm trying to find my chat. It disappeared on me. Yamikiro says, could you give more details on the contents of your how-to ZBrush course? Do I have my website open? Yes, gumroad.com/Follygon, my how-to ZBrush course. Absolutely, if you have a specific question about what is in there, I would be happy to answer anything on that. But essentially, the idea is to get up and running in ZBrush as quick as possible. It goes over all the basic fundamental software tools that I believe are going to be the most used and most needed for you, and it's pretty much all the stuff that I wish I knew when I got started using ZBrush, as there weren't a ton of videos or people online really making content for ZBrush back when I was getting started. It was pretty much all just kind of books. I got a couple Scott Spencer books back when I was getting started, which I still highly recommend. They're a little old and dated in terms of some of the tools that they mention. I think there are a lot better tools for creating a lot of stuff that was used back then. Stuff like Shadowbox, which I am personally not a giant fan of, but I still think there's a lot of good information in those. So I still recommend those books for sure. But if you're looking for like I mentioned, something to get up and running quickly and that covers a lot of the new tools and everything like that, then yeah, definitely check it out. And like I said, if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask away. I'd be happy to answer. We still got a lot more form in our fingers and our hands than we want right now. We need to figure out the way the way this finger is grabbing these straps doesn't make any sense actually, because it's going in between the gap where they would not, the finger wouldn't actually loop around. Like it should be going that way. So I think we're gonna make this a different silhouette than what I'm seeing there. I think we're just gonna make this actually work, which is what I decided over on the other hand as well, because if you look at that, it looks like the little bottle of protein nitro stalker is kind of just floating on top of his hand, which I don't think looks super great. So I'm trying to make that fit in there a little bit more, like he's gripping it. And we'll do the same thing down here. So let's do that real quick. Where'd our little bag go? We'll turn this guy on. Cool. All right. So essentially, a couple different ways we could do this. We could twist the hand, twist the bag. Let's twist both a little bit. We'll play around here. Try to figure out a good position there. No problem, Yamikiro. My pleasure, man. Alright, I I'm just going to completely like round these out, get rid of a lot of the additional surface hits that we got going on. Like for the knuckles, you could maybe do like a general plane change or something. I'm seeing a little bit of that in there, but like I said, this is going to have to change quite a bit, which is fine. We'll make it work. Alright, what I'm going to do is twist this finger a little bit, or rotate it. Something like that. Got a little bit of weird stuff going on with this finger. Oh, I'll just fix that up. Got a nice little dip in for our palm, kind of destroying the silhouette of the hand, which never looks great. What were we talking about? Speaking at universities and such, I think. But yeah, like I said, I think I said I'd be happy to, depending on the location and time. Right now I've been incredibly busy working on my latest course, so that's kind of why I had to deny the last person that asked me to come, which I'm almost done on. I'm going to be launching that here in the next week. Wow, that feels crazy to say. I've been working on this thing for a very, very, very long time. Over 6 months, over half a year. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Very excited about it. But yeah, I'll talk more about that when that's coming out. And I know more than a few of you have heard me talk about that already in the past, multiple times. What is the farthest you would go? I guess it would depend on, well, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I guess it would depend on the situation. Like if somebody's gonna pay to fly me out and everything, pay for my lodging, absolutely, yeah. Do I use Marmoset? I don't, no. Pretty much everything I do is for physical production. So not a lot of real-time necessity for things such as a marmoset and the like. This thing needs a lot more twist. What's going on, Turbo? How you doing? Great to know. Are you, who was it? Rev. Are you in school over on the West Coast? I mean, we can always Skype in, right? I actually hate Skype. So different, we can Google Hangout in. It'd probably be a lot easier. I was doing, so actually over on my YouTube channel, for those that don't know, it's a link somewhere up here at the top of the screen, I do critiques over on my YouTube channel. As well as I was giving lengthy one-on-one private critique sessions for people that were interested before I kind of got overwhelmed working on my course. So that is something that I had to put on hold while I continued working on that. But those will probably either be completely replaced by my course, or I will bring those back after launching my course. We'll kind of see how things are going. But essentially my course, for those that don't know, it is I think I mentioned I've been working on it for a long time. It's essentially a course that is a 7-week-long class that has lectures provided each week, as well as live sessions, homework, feedback, so personalized critiques, that kind of stuff. So if that's something that you're interested in, probably the best way to get more info about that is by either following my YouTube channel, or I guess it's called subscribing, or following my Twitter account, which is actually called following. But yes, I will be announcing the launch and registration of that in the next month. But it's called Mastering Appeal. If you haven't noticed, I sculpt a lot of stylized and appealing characters. And that is going to be the subject matter for the course. There's a lot of stuff out there that goes into, you know, technical software knowledge, stuff like my How-To ZBrush course on my Gumroad, but there's not a lot of content that goes into the artistic mindset and kind of fundamental knowledge necessary to create stylized and appealing characters. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, go check out my Twitter or YouTube and be prepared in the next week for more info. I've been watching for about 3 months now, and you are great. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate that. What did I miss? Studying 3D modeling with a focus on game assets. Very cool. Your YouTube channel has been a blessing. Well, awesome, man. That's exactly why it exists. So I'm glad to help you out. Like I said, when I was getting started, there just wasn't a lot of content like that. So I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. God, I wish I had something like that back when I was starting. I feel like would have cleared up a lot of things that I had questions about. So many things. And that's what my new course aims to do as well. Demystify sculpting appealing characters. Got too many edge loops up here. Really screwing this up. So let me try that. Senaru Kitsune. I don't know Senaru, unfortunately, but Kitsune, obviously fox. People that don't speak a lick Japanese probably know that one. What's going on? Why is my brush not working? I actually studied a little Japanese back in the day. Sukoshi dake, just a little. And I don't have anyone, or I haven't had anyone to practice with in like over 5 years, so my Japanese is extremely rough. But I really like the Japanese language. It's a lot of fun. And I think I would really like to study Korean as well. I've heard that the grammar is almost identical, and I know that the written alphabet is extremely easy to learn. Like, it was designed with that intent, which is pretty awesome. Now English, hop on the ball, come on. Japanese, Chinese, get rid of your kanji, please. Yamikiro asks, how long did it take you to start modeling professionally? So I guess you mean how long before I got paid to do stuff. From the day I started digitally sculpting in ZBrush, it was just under 2 years before I got a full-time job sculpting toys and other things for physical production. But I think years, I say this every time, is a terrible measurement of time, and I would not use my experience as a measurement or gauge for yours. Everybody's different. And like I said, years are just in general a bad measurement of time. Like, you wouldn't ask somebody like, oh, how long have you been, like, you have two athletes, and you wouldn't say like, oh, how long have you been running? And one person says 10 years, and the other person says 1 year. It's like, well, that doesn't really give much information, because one person could be running every single day for 10 years, and the other person could be running once a month for a year, or 10 years, or whatever, or once a week. It depends about... I really wish I could get like an hour count. Like, if you guys have Steam, it always gives you your like playtime, right? I want that in ZBrush. ZBrush devs, Pixelogic, give me my hour count in ZBrush. I need to know. That, I think, would be useful information. Because of those 2 years that I spent going from pretty much nothing to having that full-time job, I mean, I was sculpting like every single day for at least 6 hours, at least. Most days 8+. But yeah, it takes a long time to get up to that level where you can be, I think, considered an industry professional, or at least get a job in the industry, modeling or texturing, rigging, whatever you want to do. All the above. But I have found that being more specific in what you want to do has really helped me in achieving a lot of goals a lot faster than I think other people might. So I was, early on, I knew that I wanted to digitally sculpt and pretty much only do that. And do that for like production, physical production type of stuff. So like minis, toys, life-size figures, all that. And that really helped me move along a lot faster. Isn't rotating vertices really fun to watch? This is... doing anything that's like low poly like this is always so boring. At least for me. But I can at least do it mindlessly without really thinking. Which is nice, because it gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit and sound somewhat competent. Normally, talking and sculpting is extremely difficult. But when I'm doing something fairly mindless, it's not that bad. We do gotta get the tension in this feeling right, because if there's too much wiggle in these straps, it'll feel like the bag is kind of floaty. We want it to feel taut, like there's some weight to it. So by making these straight, the straps feel tighter, more taut, as I said, and therefore make it feel more integrated instead of just kind of like it's flowing all loosey-goosey. It's a very technical term, by the way, loosey-goosey. Let's see. Time is relative to everyone's progress and perspective. Absolutely. Can someone help? Is there a way to change the rendering to normal from NPR? Yes, absolutely. It's very easy. All NPR filters, what NPR is, actually, if you're brand new to using NPR, I recommend going to my YouTube channel, going to playlists, going to ZBrush 2019. That's right. Shush. And I have a playlist of all the new features and tutorials on how to use all of them, including NPR filters, or what NPR or BPR filters, which are located in your render menu. Essentially, when you click on one of those NPR little things in your lightbox, which is what I'm assuming you did, just come into your BPR filters, which is under Render, BPR filters, and just come through and toggle all of them off so that white dot is a solid white dot and not a hollow white dot. And then you'll be back to standard rendering, as they say. How did I make the straps or ropes in the first place? I used my my cube tube brush. This brush, which is available over on my Gumroad under my curve brushes. For just $4, you get 4 different curve brushes, and one of them is my cube tube brush, which is very clean geometry. I have used that to create this, and I've also added in a beveled edge, so it's a little bit more smooth on the transitional side. I'm sorry, a little bit tighter and not creased, so a little bit more smooth in that regard. But yes, my cube tube brush, I also use it for stuff like eyelashes, eyelids, seams. I used it to create these strings, these drawstrings. I use it to do all sorts of stuff. Honestly, it's probably one of my favorite brushes. And yeah, it's over on my Gumroad. Check it out. Yes, want that hour count for sure. Have I seen this tiger before? I don't know. The concept is by Dan Kelby. Dan Kelby might specifically say where he got the idea. I believe this is Dan Kelby's original concept, though. No, I do not do animation retopology, which is, I think, what you're asking. I do not do retopo a lot of the time for real-time models. So nothing that needs to be animated. But I do create topology that is sculpturally beneficial, I would say. So, for example, I don't have my witch thing close by. Like this. This was poly modeled. This is really simple and clean. Obviously, it's something very, very simple, but you can go pretty far with the Z modeler brush in ZBrush. This zipper here, this thing was poly modeled very simply. Pretty clean geo, pretty easy to do, and once it's smooth, it kind of retains the shape a lot closer to what we see there. So yeah, just kind of depends, but I think what you're asking is for animation level topology, which I don't normally do. But I did do a lot of that back in the day when I was a lot newer to modeling and sculpting, and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with it yet. But that's not to say that you shouldn't study it and learn proper topology for stuff. I find it very helpful, especially for working on faces. Learning proper edge flow for eyes and for the eyes and the mouth in particular is extremely helpful for not only animation but for modeling. Makes it a lot easier to work on those areas, especially the eyes. Eyes are so tough. Anything to make eyes easier, it's always a win in my book. Got it. Fixed the BPR filters. Awesome. Pi47. Happy to help, man. Just downloaded the material you are using. I like the way it looks. I think you're referring to the ZBrush paint material. It is a free material created by ZBrush. I pretty much always sculpt straight out of the gate using my materials, my Follygon clay materials. I have a black and white one, and then I have one that's a little bit more kind of clay colored. But I love my sculpting materials. I use them all the time, and they're very nice for seeing form. But I really like the ZBrush paint material when it comes to just doing some quick, simple poly paint stuff and getting an accurate kind of color representation. If you guys don't have that material, I recommend using the Skin Shade 4 material. I think the Skin Shade 4 material is very good as well. For seeing an example of the difference there really quick, Skin Shade 4, where you at? Where you at, girl? There you are. Bam. So there's the quick little difference. You probably can't even tell just kind of looking at the jacket. The jacket has a different material on it. But there is the... I like the Skin Shade 4 material a lot too. It's a good material. And for a... Oh, what? We don't have a material on this? Thought we did. For my my Follygon clay materials that I use, the clay sculpting materials, I recommend the just basic material for sculpting. I think the basic material is actually one of the best materials in ZBrush. It's an awesome, awesome material for sculpting and seeing form. Quick difference on those. So good that I actually keep it down here in my quick bar. I use it all the time. So this is my clay material, and here is the basic material. I like my my own clay material a little bit more because it shows form and shadow just as well as the basic material, but it is a little bit easier on my eyes, especially when I've been sculpting all day. I used to have a lot of problems like looking at my screen for a very, very long period of time, so I wanted to get something that was a little bit more soft on the eyes. So that's why I ended up creating that. And it's just nice to have my own material that I can use. And I think you can find the ZBrush paint material with a quick Google. I believe it's on his old blog still. At least I would hope it's still available. And my material is over on my Gumroad, of course, which you can find with a very simple Google as well. I'm gonna do a quick material fix because I was just messing around with my materials and some stuff is messed up here. Where is it? Fill material, there we go. Let that do its thing. Oh, crap. Stop. Now I really screwed it up. There we go. There was some stuff going on in my hand as I was working on that. And that just actually happens from poly painting and stepping up and down while sculpting through subdivision levels. It can mess up your materials. I'm not sure entirely what causes it, but it is an annoying thing that happens, but it's very, very easy to fix. What is going on up there? Alright, let's get a couple more whiskers in here and take a look at a few other things that we can work on. And if you guys want to see anything specific, we can jump around. Whoop, we still have our size modifier on. I'll turn that off real quick. Is that where I want it? I think so. Something like that. Retopoing is like a big puzzle. Yes, it is. Somewhat soothing. In a way, I agree. Something that you can kind of just get in the, oh gosh, what's his name? Get in the flow with. I wrote a paper on this dude. Genova Chen. If you guys are familiar with the game designer Genova Chen, he's the creator of Flow and Flower and Journey. All those amazing, beautiful games. Essentially, flow is the idea of, in game design, in game talk, of finding that that perfect middle ground of something that is just at your level of competency, or maybe even difficulty would be a better way to describe it. And you kind of get in a rhythm or a flow with what you're doing. It's a pretty cool concept that is absolutely applicable to sculpting. Happens to me all the time. I was getting in a bit of a flow there when I was working on the straps. It was just something that was pretty chill, pretty easy. Not necessarily difficult, but I could kind of do it mindlessly, almost. You downloaded the ZBrush Elu paint material. I'm not familiar with that. It should just be called the ZBrush paint. That's the one that I'm using at least. Ooh, here's some sirens. Hopefully nothing serious. Mike May art. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm zooming in here on this dude. I should ploop him up in the corner while I continue on. But yeah, I think this is stream number 4 or 5 that we've been working on this guy. A couple hours each time. So after this session, I think we'll be around the 8 or 10 hour mark, which is exciting. These things are so wispy and thin that I can barely make them out. Ooh. Whoops. On the wrong subtool there. I very rarely undo stuff, so I know that wasn't like the correct size and proportion, but I can still manipulate this and get it a little bit closer. Oh, whoops. I need to split that off. Oh man, folders make things so much easier for organization, don't they? He's a thick boy. We'll have to thin that out. And like I said, this doesn't need to be super accurate. We're just doing this for fun. But a lot of the time, I can't help myself. Could probably go even more thin on that, right? As long as it's not flipping inside out, should be all right. It's probably pretty close to that mark though. Probably go a bit thinner on these. We'll leave it for now though. Oh, it looks especially thin from this side. Is there anything you would see in a character modeling portfolio for production that you wouldn't see in a character modeling portfolio for animation? Yeah, I think those portfolios should be very, very different. If you're trying to get a job in animation, then you should have, you probably aren't worrying too much about modeling, right? You're more focused on creating some nice and appealing and realistic movements and animations. Whereas in a character modeling portfolio, you'd see a lot of character work for production. So I think those portfolios should be very, very different. Like I said earlier, I think it's super important to be as specific as you can with what you're trying to achieve. I think you're going to have a lot more success that way, in my opinion. Some people think you should go the generalist route, though. I mean, there's a lot of differing opinions on the matter, and I'm not necessarily correct, right? Mike asks, how were the stripes made? Were they made using an extrude via mask? Well, great question, Mike. We did this at the beginning of the stream today. I'll actually hide. These are all placeholders here, and if I hide that, you can see one of the actual stripes on the tiger there that is form-fitting to him perfectly. So I was showing off a technique that I created a while back for actually a job that I had sculpting very specific and detailed patterns on bottles last year, and this is the technique that I came up with. So this is actually geometry. It's just a thin slice of geometry that is layered perfectly over top of the body here. And it's not, I did this pretty quickly, so I don't think it's super clean right now. It's pretty close. There are some areas where it's got a little bit of warble going on there that I would like to fix, but it's good enough for now. But the process, I'll give you a Spark Notes version because the actual process you'll be able to watch once this gets uploaded over on YouTube. My channel's up here, or the Pixelogic channel. Essentially, I used there are a couple different ways you could do this. You could use a curve brush to draw out the form, manipulate it with the Z modeler brush, get something really clean. You could use a mask and extract it, and then simplify the geometry using ZRemesh with polygroups to get really clean form. So there's a lot of different processes to get to this stage. But then after you get to that stage, you want to intersect the geometry, much like what I've done with this piece here. Oh, let that quick save do its thing. So how that's intersecting, and then I used live booleans, I just spit everywhere, live booleans to create the thin strip where those were intersecting. Because essentially when you use a live boolean, it creates a polygroup, a new polygroup from that geometry where they were intersecting, or where it subtracted from the head. So that is how I did that. And again, if you want to check out the full process, that'll be available here soon after I'm done streaming. Alright, let's see. I don't think I even want to... I was going to mirror these over to the other side as a starting point, but honestly, they're so vastly different from the other side that I don't think it's even worth my time to do something like that. Let's start with the hard one here, because it's the dumbest curve. Something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Not on the first try. Things never are perfect on the first try. I always require some manipulation. Why are you being dumb? Let me grab you. There you go. It's actually pretty close. Like I said, we're not going for super accuracy tonight, or on this character at all. What's going on here? Why are you so thin? This happened on the last one too. Alright, maybe it's just every angle. It looks like it's more thin from the top, but maybe that's just my imagination. It's kind of hard to tell. I'll fix these later on. Let's just get the most basic shape. And break up the shape so that it doesn't look exactly the same from the top. Actually, this is a lot smaller in the reference, but we'll leave it for now. Pars asks, which other software besides ZBrush are you using? I guess you mean just like in general. For my professional work, pretty much only ZBrush. And Photoshop, Illustrator, and Premiere. That's about it. No problem, Mike. My pleasure, man. Mauricio Toro asks, hi Ben, how much time did it take to do something like this? I believe that's what you're asking. Awesome job and greetings from Colombia. Well, welcome. Hope things are going well in Colombia. This is our, let me check. Let me check real quick. I believe this is the, where's my, hold on. I'm getting lost. Yes, this is number 5, so each session on this has been 2 hours, so after we're done here today, we will be sitting at the 10-hour mark. Honestly, if I was just working on this without streaming though, I'd be a lot further, probably done with this by now. I'm a lot slower when I'm streaming, obviously, because I'm talking and explaining stuff and showing off demonstrations of different tools and everything else under the sun. So yeah, I'd probably we'll be at about 10 hours once we're done here, and I would probably I say I would probably be done. I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I'd be pretty close to being done with this. There's something weird going on with my masking. Also, the mesh is black and very, very thin, which makes it very hard for me to tell if the geometry is even masked. But I've had a lot of fun working on this dude. He's a very, very fun character. Again, the 2D over here is by Dan Kelby. If you guys have never checked out his work, he's got some really cool concepts if you guys are looking for some cool stuff in a similar style. Where's that last whisker going? What is this? I'm trying to figure out what that whisker is. I think I'm gonna leave that one out because I cannot tell where it's coming from, or I'll have to zoom in on the image really, really far. Do you guys see? I don't know if you guys can even see the where's scale? I don't know if you guys can see the whiskers on my screen. All right, so we got this one, that long one. That's fine. What is this though? Is this coming from on top of his head? Got like a little alfalfa hair there or something? I hope so. I might put that in. It's pretty funny. Beautiful. All right, let's fix some of these. They're so very tiny. Makes it hard to manipulate some of this stuff, but we'll do our best. Just kind of thinking about the uniformity of these a little bit. Let's deflate these. They might flip inside out, but I don't really care. You could never print something like this. Like that. That's definitely inside out up there. Just do that, I guess. Oof. Maybe not. I have this green color on here and I can't see my menu. I want to turn down the Z intensity for my smooth brush. The smooth brush will, on tubes of geometry, it will pull it in. So that's essentially what I'm doing here. All right, looking good. Looking like some whiskers. Whiskers make the man, they say. The tiger boy. He's actually balding, and that is his one hair left. I love it. Here, let's do this. Duplicate. Give me this little thing here. Go on up. The last hair. That's what it looks like. It looks like it's on his head to me. I really can't tell. It kind of looks silly, so I don't think I'll include it. It's kind of fun, though. Maybe that's why he's so upset. He's got that one hair left. Compressor. What is going on? I'm playing around with NPR, got some interesting results, and exported images are really bad aliased. What am I doing wrong? You probably just need to increase the resolution of your image. Your render is based on your document size, so adjust your document size, your width and height, and you can actually use the AA half button over here, which will anti-alias your image by essentially cutting it in half. And then you can return to that by clicking on the actual button here, the 1:1 size. So play around with that and increase your resolution. That'll probably help you out. Is there a way to organize multiple images loaded in Spotlight and not by hand, like arrange optimal in PureRef, for example? I don't use PureRef. I tried using it like twice and I didn't like it. Thank you for the awesome content and streams. Sure, man, absolutely. There is not a way to organize multiple images other than the tile unified and tile selected buttons. Very quickly, if we go into our light box, Spotlight, I'll just grab one of these at random. So here we have a bunch of different images loaded into Spotlight, and this is useful with the new Snapshot 3D tool set. So essentially I can select one of these images and then click on, let's say, tile selected, and it'll take that image and it'll blow that one up and make all the other ones the same size but a little bit smaller underneath of that. Another thing that you can do is tile unified, which will make everything the exact same size, and then you can scale those up, and there's a lot of images in here, so quite a difficult task to kind of organize all of these. I think the tiled selected is probably the best way to go, in my opinion, if you have a lot of images. I pretty much always use the tile selected when I am working with multiple references, even if it's only just a few. Let's grab, but you said reference images, so I'm guessing you're not using too many, maybe like 5 at the most. That's honestly pretty high. So yeah, try out tile selected. That might be the way to go. Let me grab my tiger bag. Nice character. Thank you, Willabert Gomez. Appreciate it. In a character modeling portfolio, wireframes, do you include those same things in a portfolio for production art or something else? So, depends what you mean by production art. If you mean physical production, really nice, high-resolution digital sculpts are going to be what people are looking for. But in terms of jobs for a lot of that stuff, it's pretty few and far between, and it's pretty competitive. But that is what I would expect to see. If I was going to hire someone, which I had to do at my job working in, my full-time job working in physical production, you know, we didn't care if you had animations in your portfolio because that's not what you're going to be doing. And we didn't care if you had turntables are fine because then we can, you know, see that everything's looking nice and appealing from multiple different angles. But in terms of topology, it's nice to know that you can do that you have an understanding of it. But I'm not going to expect you to have that on every single character. I'm not going to, you know, be a stickler about that. I just want to see some really, really good sculpts. some really good work. Let me see those good forms. If you got that, you're golden. But obviously for something that's for digital production, the opposite is true. On every character that you're, character or object that you're producing, you should probably have some wireframes, as well as showing off your UVs through your texture maps and everything else. It just kind of depends. Try to put yourself in the shoes of the employer and think about what they might, you know, be looking for based on the job duties of what you are attempting to apply for. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Trying to space these out a bit more because they felt super, super boring being all in the same spot like that. So there we go, that feels a bit more visually interesting, as well as make them not feel like they're all perfectly equidistant from one another, which is always a big no-no. Alright, cool. I've come too late. How did you do the cat's long mustache? Well, we just did that. I used the curved tube snap brush. I also used, under picker, turn on once Z, and that'll make drawing out your curve to be straight, or to have the same depth, I should say, a lot easier. So curved tube snap plus the picker. You can use the unified tiles option. Yes, that is the exact one that I showed off, actually. Hi Ben, I make low poly furnitures with 3ds Max. Do you think that ZBrush would be good also? Yes, absolutely. In terms of low poly modeling tools, the Z Modeler brush is fantastic, which is how I made something like this little bottle. It's also how I made the bag down here and all the parts for the bag. The Z Modeler brush, plus a few sculptural brushes as well. I use it all the time. That plus, you know, if you're trying to go for that like low poly, like this kind of look, like something like this. This is super easy to do in ZBrush because you can just grab some geometry that's not filled with a black color so you can actually see it. And let me show you how to make a low poly rock in like 5 seconds. I'm using a trim dynamic brush. So you could do this with furniture as well, but obviously you wouldn't smoosh it all up and make it into a rock shape. So there's our basic rock. Fantastic. We'll do a quick Dynamesh on it just so that the poles are gone. And then what we'll do is we'll go into our Z plugin menu under Decimation Master, Pre-Process Current. It'll process the geometry, and then from there we can decimate it. And I'll set the percentage of decimation down to 1%. And here we go. We're starting to get that low poly kind of feel already. We'll do 0.1. Bam. There we go. So something really simple like that. Very easy to do. So if that's more the low poly feel that you're going for, you can also do that kind of stuff in ZBrush using something like Decimation Master. Also, Decimation Master is something that you want to use if you're working in physical production, because a lot of the time your stuff is going to be too high resolution to move forward in production. So like if you're going to mill something or print something, a lot of the time you're going to need to decimate it first. In particular for working with like Kuka mill arms and stuff, those things have a lot of trouble processing high poly count files. Like it can take hours to process something that's like 1 million polys. Alright, so we've done our whiskers, we've fixed a lot of stuff in our hands, we've given them claws, but we didn't give them claws on that hand for some reason. Let's do that real quick before we forget. Grab a duplicate of our claws. Really, it's going to be claw. I'm going to delete all those but one probably. Whoop. And we'll do this. Make it a little bit easier to work on. Pretty easy stuff. Just some quick duplications. The background color here is actually really starting to destroy my eyes. I just had it set because it matched that. I'm gonna fix that real quick before my eyes explode in my head. So much nicer. Try to keep a lot of stuff on my screen as dark as I possibly can, because when you spend all day on a computer, I don't want my eyes to end up like fried eggs. For those that are not familiar with a little application called Flux, I would highly encourage you to check it out. It's a free little tool that, as the sun goes down, you type in your time zone or location, and it does the rest. But essentially, as the sun goes down, it does what most smartphones do now. Flux has been around for a long time. But essentially, it removes a lot of the blue light in your monitor. It's a very nice little free tool. It's called Flux. I think it's FLU.X. Someone in chat might know specifically. But if you Google Flux, I bet you'll find it. Beautiful. All right. Very interesting. I also like the new Z Remesher. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the new Z Remesher is awesome for hard surface stuff. So in particular, if you're importing some CAD files or something like that. So I don't know what, I think you said 3ds Max. So you're probably doing low poly modeling in Max, but if you're importing some like CAD data, the geometry for that is not typically going to be, you know, like what you would consider probably low poly. So the new Z Remesher can be super helpful for that kind of stuff. The new algorithm with, I think it's called edge detection, right? There's detect edges, right? Not edge detection, but detect edges. Same thing, just flip-flopped. And the keep creases options are very, 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 very cool. They make all that just a million times easier. I don't like the arm here from the profile very much. Feels weird. I'm gonna try giving him a bit more of an elbow there. See if I can make that feel a little less awkward. Ooh, come back. Trying to use my pinch brush. Do that all the time. That feels a bit more natural. And we are still matching the silhouette, so that makes me happy. Awesome. All right. So that takes care of that a little bit. Let's pose our legs up a little bit more, and the body as well as the head. I wanted to wait till I did the stripes on the head before I went into posing more so. So now, the way we're going to do this is just hop into Transpose Master. It's in your Z plugin menu if you're unfamiliar with it. We're going to use that. I'm going to turn off Live Boolean. I'm not sure why that's on, actually. I was using it for these stripes. That's right. All right, and let's do some quick posing here to start pushing this in the right direction. I'm going to keep this fairly minor and quick. I'm going to set up some polygroups first. What's great about the Z plugin Transpose Master is that you can set up polygroups in here, and they will not affect your polygroups on your original geometry. For those that are unfamiliar with this toolset, essentially it allows you to manipulate all your subtools in geometry at once, and then you can, with the click of a button, translate all of that, all of those changes back to your individual subtools in geometry. Very, very nice tool. Alright, these legs are short and stubby, so I don't think it's going to take too much to start getting these going in a better direction. Oh, you know what? I might do those the opposite way that I just did. So, some posing tips. If you guys are familiar with contrapposto, another way to help exaggerate contrapposto. So if you don't know what that is, it's essentially offsetting the direction of your hips and here. Your hips and shoulders. A great example of this is the statue of David. Helps make your, which, by the way, the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire life. One of the most amazing things. Statue of David. Amazing sculpture. Seeing images of it does not do it justice. Well, that's fun. That's a little fun. But yes, the sculpture is amazing, and it's huge. But essentially offsetting the direction or angle of the shoulders and the hips help to give a figure a more kind of like natural or dynamic look. It's a very nice way to do it. But another thing about contrapposto that also helps to do that is with the rotation and twist of the body. So if you have a very simplistic way to think of that is if you have your left arm going back and your right arm going forward, your left shoulder going back and your right arm going forward, you want your hips to twist the opposite direction. So that's exactly what we'll do here. And like I said, that's a very simplistic way to think of it, but essentially offsetting the rotation of those objects, or those joints, pivots, whatever you want to say. It's another great way to think of it. Let's do you, give me all this, and do a quick little mask. I'll try to get a little bit more hip rotation without breaking things too much. I would say a good rule of thumb is that if you're going to be posing something, after you've modeled it neutrally and you're going to be sculpting the pose, be prepared to break stuff. You are almost guaranteed to break more than a few things. And kind of getting in that headspace early on is a good idea. It's very helpful. So be prepared. All right, how do I want to do this with all this junk in the way? I'm going to add a little tilt to the head. Do I have any good content, any content or good links for using ZModeler? Absolutely. If you go over on my YouTube channel, go to, what's the easiest way to find this video? Let me just find the exact name of the video, and that'll, or you know what? I'll just grab it and I'll give you the link. How about that? I have a bunch of videos of me going through ZModeler stuff on my channel, but here is the exact, some people to pop, exact one, share, give me that shortened link. It is ZBrush Hard Surface tutorial, creating an alarm clock. I go through the entire process using the ZModeler brush, as well as a bunch of other hard surface tools to create this clock. So follow along, whoa, what was that? Follow along, enunciation, huh? And yeah, I think you'll learn a lot in that video. It's like 3 hours of a whole tutorial going through that thing. And let's do a quick mask. Oh, how do I want to do this? This is a tough one because I don't want to mess up my eyeball shape, so I can't skew. So we'll try doing a simplistic rotation and then going back through and fixing some shapes in the head. Yeah, I might not need to. All right. I'm doing a little trick there to shift my mask down. So we'd want the head to go this way a little bit. He's pretty much facing the camera head on, so if I can make this a little bit more dynamic, I think that's a good thing. Let's play around with the rotation of this because I don't really like it. Problem is, we get into ground penetration territory. Actually, we're already there. Whoops. Oh, what am I doing? Come on. Try to make that work a little bit more. So we're not breaking the ground plane there. If we were to turn on our floor, you can see that a little bit better. Whereas before, going right through. So that changes the shape of our arm quite a bit, but honestly, I'm fine with that. I don't like keeping my floor plane on though, it just gets in the way. Let's get just a tiny bit more twist in the upper body. So this is where things kind of break when geometry has different levels of resolution. And you're trying to move multiple things at once. That's where you're going to run into the most amount of problems. Pretty small rotation, only a few degrees, really, but I think it'll make a difference. Small changes, that's what it's all about, that add up to a lot. And then if we can get a little bit more offset in our shoulders, that would be awesome. Get some more contrapposto. How do we want to do that? I think we'll just grab our clothing. We'll mask all this. And I'll just kind of finagle it. And we are almost at time here. So if we have any additional questions, please get them in before we head out. I'm not sure, so I saw a thing. I don't know if anybody on the Pixo team is here at this moment, but I saw that Jose's stream had been postponed. If that is true, maybe we can go a little bit longer here and work on some more stuff. But honestly, I can barely keep my eyes open right now. I am dead. So for a lot of stuff with like anatomical human characters, I would not do what I'm doing right now because I'm actually breaking his bones. Bones don't move. Well, they move at joints, but they don't flex and bend like what I was doing here with like moving his shoulder. It's okay for this since it's like a pretty simplistic shaped character, and in terms of skeleton and bony landmarks, it doesn't really need to be defined super well in that regard. I can kind of break a lot of that. Wait, what? Come back. This is why I set up polygroups in the beginning, because I end up screwing them up. So we got a little bit of that way, so we want this to go down on this side. Get this feeling a little bit more dynamic. These are pretty quick, simple movements, so nothing too complicated. Alright, and that's pretty exaggerated, in all honesty. For that curve, but we will keep it. Let's head on back and watch the changes take place. So this is a pretty, what would be the word, docile? It's a pretty small pose, docile pose, very simplistic pose. Let's go with that. So I tried to make it a little bit more dynamic, and you know, I think we got there. So we're starting to get some offsets and like the shoulders and the hip region, as well as the legs and shoulders, and trying to get a little bit more twist in there. He's pretty much just a big old cylinder though, so there's not too much room for offsetting shoulders when he doesn't really have too much of shoulders. But I can at least add some twist to that area, so I think that feels a lot better than being in the neutral. And yeah, so typically what I do when, ooh, I thought we were gonna crash. There's like a little hiccup there. Typically what I do when posing is I will start off doing a quick little block out of the pose and transpose master, much like what I do for sculpting anything else. Start with the block out and then start to refine it more from there. So we just did the block out of the pose, so now I would start doing a second pass on everything, making sure that we didn't break anything too much. If I was working on a character that had a bit more an anatomical form than something so lumpy, For stuff like arm bends, leg bends, shoulder moves, anything like that, head turns, there's going to be musculature and form that's going to be much different. It is going to change. So this would be the point at which I would start refining that quite a bit. For this, though, I'm probably just going to refine and make sure things are lining up as well as I can and continue sculpting on this guy. But we are near the end of our time, as I mentioned. So I will spend probably the last bit of our time, unless we have any specific questions. I'll just spend the rest of our time doing a little bit of cleanup here and there. But if anybody wants to see anything specific or has any specific questions, we can talk about that. I'm going to turn off symmetry on all of this junk, because we've just broken sim. How many subtools? We're at 36 subtools in that middle territory. Not too many. Alright, cool. Definitely getting there. Oh, come back. Do a quick little render here. My mouse is flying off the screen for some reason. And I think that's all I want to do. Just a quick little shadow pass on this guy. We'll leave on the temporary stripes and all that junk. We'll just do like a quick little preview render. See how he's shaping up. He's looking pretty good. Typically, once I get into the posing stage, that is the point at which I start taking screenshots of my stuff and throwing it in Photoshop to do a quick little invert on my my sculpt. Start doing some turnaround images and then flip the images so that I can do like a little paint over to figure out where things aren't feeling quite correct. I'll show you guys another cool little trick here for that, though. But yeah, he's really getting there. He's really starting to shape up. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. He's going places. If you guys want to continue sculpting on your character, but be able to see it in a bit of a new light, what you can do is do a merge visible. You could manually go through and mirror all your objects, but what I like to do is click on this merge visible button. Come in here, and some of this will be low poly because I didn't have subdivs on all this. But what we can do is just run a quick little mirror operation on that and start to kind of see him in a new light. It feels a lot different, especially when you already have asymmetry in something like this. I think he's feeling, now that I look at this with this, he's feeling a bit too snaky in the tilt in the head, so we might have pushed that a little bit too far. This curve feels pretty strong to me. So probably to fix that, what I'll do is lower something over on this shoulder and try to sync those up a bit better. I think the offset is just a little bit too much and it's making him feel a little bit too curvilicious, tigerlicious. But yeah, that's pretty much like the simple process for how you can sit here and rotate around your character and get an idea of just like a new perspective, I should say, for looking at things. I'm gonna delete him now. It's always nice to do that. It's always nice also to like take a break and give your eyes a rest from looking at your character or whatever you're creating. Find there's a lot of value in doing that. Later, Pars. Have a great night, man. Do you think that a more elaborate texturing PBR would look good on this type of model? More elaborate. I'm not sure what you mean by more elaborate. There's no texturing on this at all right now. There's literally just blocked out, filled in colors that I sampled from from the geometry over here. But maybe you mean like more realistic type of textures, something like that. I absolutely think that could look really cool. Faux show. What's going on? I think I have a bunch of extra. No, I think it's just that one. I'm gonna delete that. I did that as a demonstration earlier, and I'm gonna redo it to make it more clean later on. But yeah, I think like realistic, like knit or sewn type materials and textures for like clothing on this kind of stuff, and some fur. I think that can always look really good if it's done right, for sure. There are lots of animations and films where that has been proven. Like in something like Zootopia. I think this looks like the Zootopia style. What is that? They have furs and more realistic textures for their clothing and stuff like that. I think it could absolutely work, yeah. I was using Transpose Master. I'm not using Transpose Master any longer, though. Unless you are just referring to my Transpose line, which is not Transpose Master. Hand-painted textures? Absolutely, man. I think anything could look good if it's done right. Just kind of depends. If you're more into that kind of wow hand-painted style, absolutely. I personally love hand-painted stuff. I think it looks awesome. I very often hand paint my eyes, just because there's such a variation in different styles that you can see there. And I will be revealing the character that I'm working on for my newest course, which has hand painted eyes. So you'll see an example of that here soon. I'll mention it again here before I head out. But I have a new course that is coming out in the next week. I'll be making an announcement video over on my YouTube channel. So if you are not subbed over there, definitely go check it out. There's a ton of awesome free tutorials and other 3D modeling related videos you guys can access over there. And that is where I'll be announcing my new course, which is called Mastering Appeal. Essentially, the idea is that there is a ton of content out there that will teach you how to use software like ZBrush, or how to create something really specific like a bag, which I think we discussed during our last stream, or maybe 2 streams ago. But there's not a lot of content that goes into the fundamental mental abilities and principles used to create stylized and appealing characters, much like this one. And I talk about this as I run into the principles during my streams, but this course is a 7-week-long program. Again, Mastering Appeal. I'll be announcing it here soon. If you guys are interested in it, YouTube channel /Follygon, youtube.com/Follygon. Or just Google Follygon. You'll find all my stuff. 7-week-long program. Let's see. We got lectures each week averaging from an hour to 2 hours in length, as well as live sessions for Q&A and feedback, as well as personalized critique on your progress on the class with each progressing week. Throughout the entire course, you will be creating and working on one character that you'll create from scratch, and each week is a different kind of stage of that process, starting with fundamentals, going into block out, refinement, and so on from there. All right. It's feeling a bit better up here in the stripes. We'll have to get these to line up a bit better. For those that are kind of just joining us and have no idea what I'm doing here with these floating thick stripes of geometry, you can come back and watch the VOD after it's uploaded on YouTube, and I talk about the process and I show a quick demonstration of how it works. But essentially we use these to create the texture by using intersections. You can use intersection masker, or you can use live booleans, or technically you could use Dynamesh booleans as well, but live booleans are a little bit more accurate, which is kind of the whole reason why I'm doing this in this somewhat crazy way. But I think that that is going to be a good place for us to stop tonight. So again, click that follow or sub button wherever you guys are watching here on the Pixelogic channel, and stick around. I believe someone else will be streaming in an hour after me or so. I think Jose was supposed to stream tonight. I'm not sure if his stream was postponed or what. I didn't see an update on the new time, so maybe check out the Pixelogic Twitter account for that. But if you guys want to check out more of my stuff, obviously my YouTube channel, I was shouting out, somebody was asking about a Z-Modeler brush tutorial, and I linked a video to that. So all sorts of tutorials and other free content on there, as well as my Gumroad, which has courses up here at the top, as well as all the brushes, materials, base meshes, my UI, all the stuff that I use professionally to do my work, as well as some freebies on there as well. So check it all out, gumroad.com/Follygon. I'll ploop a link down here in chat because I know the URL thing is covered up over there. And to find any of my other stuff, just Google Follygon, find my art station, all that stuff. But yes, you guys have a fantastic night, and I think during our next stream, we will probably finish this guy up just in another couple hours. We are sitting right now, for those that were asking, we should be at right about the 10-hour mark. Now, this is our 5th session. Each one has been just a couple hours, so about the 10-hour mark, so we'll probably finish him up in about 12. But yeah. I will see you guys then. That'll be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern U.S. time. Or you can check me out over on my YouTube channel, as I mentioned before. But I will see you guys then. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And yeah. All right. See you guys.